We've been married for 8 years. No kids, just us and our dog, Rocky. On the outside, everything looked great. Claire had a successful job in corporate marketing, and I ran my own contracting business. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Weekends were for binge-watching Netflix, grabbing drinks with friends, or hiking trails near our home in Portland. Looking back, there were small cracks, things I shrugged off as quirks or rough patches. Claire always liked to keep her phone face down. I thought it was just a habit. She started working late more often, blaming her ambitious coworker, Eric, for piling stuff on her plate. I didn't question it. I trusted her, and honestly, I was proud of how hard she worked. But trust can make you blind. Last Tuesday, I decided to surprise her. She'd forgotten her lunch on the counter, a turkey club I'd made, and I figured I'd drop it off at her office. Nothing grand, just a little gesture to brighten her day. I didn't tell her I was coming. When I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted her right away, but she wasn't heading into the building. She was walking toward a sleek, black Audi, Eric's car. I froze. She got in the passenger seat like it was second nature, laughing as she adjusted the seatbelt. Eric leaned over, close enough that I could see the spark in her smile through the windshield. My stomach tightened. I should have driven away, but instead, I tailed them. Yeah, I know. It sounds dramatic, but something about it felt wrong. They stopped at a park about 10 minutes away. I parked a good distance back, trying not to attract attention. From my car, I watched them walk to a bench near the pond. They sat close, too close. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were laughing, holding hands, and leaning into each other like teenagers. My mind was racing, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't work. This wasn't carpooling. This was something else. I didn't confront them, not yet. I drove home, my head a swirling mess of anger, confusion, and denial. Claire came home later that evening, her smile easy and unbothered. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just been playing happy couple with her coworker in the park. Work was a nightmare, she sighed, kicking off her heels and flopping onto the couch. Eric's so demanding. I might have to pull another late night tomorrow. I forced a smile, biting back the questions swirling in my head. Long day, huh? I said. She nodded, already scrolling through her phone. You have no idea. And that's how it started, the unraveling of the life I thought I knew. After that day at the park, I couldn't stop replaying what I'd seen. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe they're just friends. But deep down, I knew better. Claire wasn't acting like someone with nothing to hide. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to watch and wait. That didn't last long. The next morning, Claire left the house earlier than usual. Big presentation today, she said, kissing me on the cheek as she grabbed her travel mug. Her tone was upbeat, breezy. Wish me luck. Good luck, I replied, forcing a smile. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I started pacing the living room, my gut screaming at me to act. The memory of her laughing with Eric in the park wouldn't leave me alone. I grabbed my keys and decided to check something. Her work schedule. It was risky, sure, but I knew the receptionist, Paula. She'd always been friendly, even joked about how lucky I was to have Claire. When I showed up at the office that morning, Paula didn't think twice about chatting. Hey, Paula, I said, leaning casually on the counter. Claire forgot her planner at home. I was wondering, does she have any big meetings today? Paula furrowed her brow. I don't think so. Let me check. She clicked around on her computer. Nope, nothing scheduled until the team meeting at 3. Why? Is everything okay? Oh, yeah, I said, forcing a chuckle, just making sure she wasn't swamped. Thanks, Paula. I left the office feeling like my chest had been cracked open. No big meetings? Then why had she left early? Where the hell was she? That evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I had to confront her. Claire walked through the door around 6, carrying a reusable shopping bag. Hey, babe, she said, smiling. I grabbed wine for date night Friday. Your favorite, by the way. Where were you this morning? I asked, skipping the pleasantries. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. What do you mean? I told you. I had a presentation. I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. Funny, I stopped by your office to drop off your planner. Paula said you didn't have any meetings until the afternoon. Claire froze, her expression hardening. You stopped by my office? Are you spying on me now? That's not the point, Claire. Where were you? Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. I can't believe this. I work my ass off, and you're accusing me of, what? Skipping work? Sneaking around? She dropped the bag on the counter with a thud. Unbelievable. Answer the question, I said, my voice rising. Where were you this morning? I was running errands, Ryan. Jesus Christ. I didn't think I needed to report every little thing I do. Errands, I repeated, my tone dripping with disbelief. Like sitting in the park with Eric? Her face went pale. For a split second, she looked like a deer in headlights. Then the excuses started. It's not what you think, she said, her voice turning defensive. Eric and I were talking about work. He's stressed about his project, and I was just being supportive. By holding his hand? I shot back, laughing like you're on a damn date. Claire threw her hands up in exasperation. Oh my God, Ryan. It wasn't like that. I was just being a friend. Is that a crime now? The venom in her tone made my blood boil. You're lying to my face, Claire. I'm not stupid. She rolled her eyes, grabbing the bag off the counter and stalking toward the bedroom. I don't have time for this, she snapped. You're being ridiculous. I followed her, my voice cold. If I'm so ridiculous, let me see your phone. Claire whirled around, clutching her bag like a shield. Excuse me? You heard me. If there's nothing going on, you won't mind showing me your phone. Wow, she said, her laugh hollow and bitter. So this is what we've come to? You don't trust me at all. I stared at her, my jaw clenched. Trust is earned, Claire. And right now, you're doing a damn good job of destroying it. She stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door, leaving me alone with the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. That night, she slept on the couch. Or at least, she pretended to. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell we'd gotten here, and how much worse it was going to get. The tension in the house the next morning was suffocating. Claire was cold and distant, slamming cupboards as she got ready for work. She didn't say goodbye when she left, just grabbed her bag and stormed out the door without so much as a glance in my direction. Good. I wasn't in the mood to play happy couple. Once she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee. My gut churned as I replayed our fight. Her excuses, her deflection. It all felt too rehearsed. And that reaction when I mentioned Eric? She'd practically admitted guilt without saying it outright. I needed proof. Something concrete. Claire always guarded her phone like it was the nuclear codes. But that morning, she left it charging on the kitchen counter. She never did that. Maybe the fight had distracted her, or maybe she thought I wouldn't dare cross that line. Either way, I took it as a sign. I grabbed the phone, my hands trembling. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might drown out my thoughts. The screen was locked, of course, but I knew her passcode. She told me months ago when we were ordering takeout. I'd never used it, never had a reason to, until now. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the lock screen. Was this crossing a line? Would it make me just as bad as her? Then I remembered the way she laughed with Eric, the way she brushed off my questions, the way she refused to let me see her phone. Screw it. I tapped in the code. The first thing I checked was her texts. Most of them were harmless. Conversations with her sister, her mom, coworkers. But when I scrolled down, I found a thread labeled Eric. My stomach sank. I opened the thread, my hands gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. The most recent message was from last night, after our fight. Eric, everything okay? You seemed upset earlier. Claire, yeah, just Ryan being paranoid. He doesn't understand us. Us. That one word knocked the wind out of me. I scrolled up, skimming through weeks of messages. The text started innocent enough. Jokes about work, venting about projects, but they quickly became more personal. Eric, I can't stop thinking about last weekend. You looked amazing in that dress. Claire, stop it, Lowell. You're gonna get me in trouble. Eric, trouble is worth it for you. Further up, there were plans for lunches, drinks after work, and even a weekend work trip that Claire had told me was mandatory. Claire, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Counting down the hours. Eric, same. I've got something special planned for us. I felt sick. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. This wasn't just emotional cheating. This was a full-blown affair. But the worst part? The pictures. Tucked between the texts were selfies. Claire smiling in a hotel room mirror, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Eric grinning with his arm around her, both of them holding champagne glasses. A photo of them at a beach, her head on his shoulder. She hadn't even tried to hide it. I spent the rest of the morning pacing the house, my thoughts spinning out of control. I wanted to call her, scream at her, demand answers. But I knew she'd deny everything. Claire was a master manipulator. She'd twist the truth until I was the one apologizing. No, I needed a plan. First, I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I backed up her entire phone onto my laptop, just in case she tried to delete anything. When I was done, I put her phone back exactly where she'd left it. By the time Claire came home that evening, I was calm. Or at least, I looked calm. She walked through the door, her smile fake and strained. "Hey," she said casually, like nothing had happened. "Hey," I replied, my tone even. She glanced at me, wary. "You okay?" I forced a small smile. "Yeah, just thinking about things." She didn't push further. Instead, she disappeared into the bedroom, leaving me alone with my thoughts. She had no idea what was coming. That night, I barely slept. The evidence was burning a hole in my mind, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw those texts, those pictures, that smug smile on Eric's face. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew Claire too well. She'd lie, deflect, turn the blame on me. If I wanted the truth, I needed to catch her with no way out. The next morning, Claire was back to her usual routine. Calm, collected, completely unbothered. "I'll be late tonight," she said, casually slipping her earrings on at the dining table. "Another client dinner. Don't wait up, okay?" I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Sure. Have fun." She didn't even flinch, just smiled, kissed my cheek, and walked out the door. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty space where she'd been. Then I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted, my older brother, Jack. Jack's the kind of guy who doesn't take crap from anyone. He's blunt, loyal, and has an uncanny ability to cut through the noise and see things clearly. When I told him what was going on, he didn't mince words. "She's playing you, Ryan," he said. "You need to stop giving her the benefit of the doubt. If she's cheating, she's not going to admit it unless you force her hand." "I've got proof," I said. "Texts, pictures, everything. But I need to catch her in the act." Jack was silent for a moment, then sighed. "You want me to help?" I hesitated. Dragging him into this mess felt wrong, but I needed someone on my side. "Yeah," I admitted. "She's supposed to be at a client dinner tonight. I'm betting she'll be with Eric." Jack didn't hesitate. "Say no more. I'll pick you up at 6. That evening, Jack and I parked outside Claire's office building, waiting for her to leave. We didn't have to wait long. At 6:20, she came out, looking stunning in a tight black dress I hadn't seen before. Her hair was done up, her makeup flawless. She wasn't dressed for work. She was dressed for him. "Bingo," Jack muttered, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. We followed her car at a safe distance as she drove across town to a fancy Italian restaurant. Sure enough, Eric was waiting for her out front, leaning casually against his Audi. He straightened when he saw her, opening the car door for her like a perfect gentleman. She laughed, sliding into the passenger seat. They drove off, leaving her car parked at the restaurant. Jack glanced at me. "Still want to do this?" I clenched my jaw, my heart pounding. "Yeah, let's go." They didn't go far, just a few blocks to a boutique hotel. Jack parked across the street, both of us watching in tense silence as Eric and Claire walked into the lobby together, arm in arm. She was practically glowing, laughing at something he said. My stomach churned. "That's all I need," I said, grabbing my phone. I snapped a few pictures of them entering the hotel, their intimacy undeniable. Then I got out of the car. Jack grabbed my arm. "Ryan, are you sure about this? I nodded, my jaw set. I need to hear it from her. No more games. He let go, watching as I crossed the street and entered the lobby. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I strode past, my heart pounding in my ears. I found the elevators and hit the up button, my hands shaking. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't let this continue. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. My mind raced as I hit the button for the 5th floor. When the doors opened again, I stepped into the hallway, scanning for any sign of them. Then I heard it, Claire's laugh, muffled behind a door at the end of the hall. Room 507. I stood there for a moment, my fists clenched at my sides. Then I knocked. The laughter stopped. There was a moment of silence, followed by the sound of footsteps. The door opened slightly, and there she was, Claire, her face glowing with surprise and panic. "Ryan," she stammered, her eyes darting behind her to where Eric was sitting on the bed, his shirt unbuttoned. "What are you doing here? What do you think I'm doing here?" I said, my voice low and cold. "You've got 5 seconds to explain this." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she stepped into the hallway, pulling the door shut behind her. "Ryan, this isn't what it looks like," she whispered furiously. "It's a work meeting." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing down the empty hallway. A work meeting? At a hotel? With him half undressed? "Sure," she hissed, glancing around nervously. "Can we talk about this later?" "Not here." "No," I said, my voice rising. "We're talking about it now." "How long, Claire? How long have you been screwing him behind my back?" Her face twisted with anger. "Don't make this a scene, Ryan. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I snapped. "You're the one sneaking around like a cheap soap opera villain, and I'm embarrassing myself?" Eric opened the door then, looking smug as hell. "Maybe you should calm down, man," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Stay out of this," I growled, pointing at him. "This is between me and my wife." Claire stepped between us, her voice sharp. "Ryan, you're being ridiculous. Eric is just..." "Just what?" I interrupted. "Your coworker? Your friend? Save it, Claire. I've seen the texts. I've seen the pictures. I know everything." Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked genuinely scared. "You what?" she whispered. "You heard me," I said. "I know." The hallway fell silent, the weight of her lies hanging between us like a thundercloud. For once, she didn't have a clever response, no quick lie to get her out of this. She just stood there, staring at me, her mask finally slipping. This was just the beginning. Claire's silence spoke volumes. For the first time, her endless lies couldn't save her. She stood there, her polished image crumbling before my eyes, while Eric hovered awkwardly in the doorway behind her. His smugness was gone now, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. I crossed my arms, my voice cutting through the tension. "What's the matter, Claire? Cat got your tongue?" She glanced back at Eric, her desperation barely concealed. "Ryan, this isn't what you think." "Really?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." Eric stepped forward, his tone annoyingly calm. "Ryan, man, let's be adults about this. No need to cause a scene." I turned on him, my fists clenching. "Adults? You want to talk about being an adult? How about you keep your hands off someone else's wife?" "Ryan, stop," Claire said sharply, stepping between us. Her voice was low and controlled, the tone she used when she was trying to take charge of a situation. "Let's not do this here. Can we go somewhere private and talk?" "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean like your little hotel room rendezvous with Eric?" Her jaw tightened, and I could see the cracks forming in her composure. She'd run out of excuses, and she knew it. The awkward silence was broken by the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned to see Jack standing at the end of the hallway, his expression hard as stone. He must have followed me inside, probably worried things would escalate. He nodded at me, his presence grounding me. "Everything okay here?" Jack said, his tone casual but laced with menace. Eric paled slightly, his confidence evaporating. We were just having a conversation, he muttered. Yeah, Jack said, crossing his arms. Looks like a real friendly one. Claire's gaze darted between us, her mask of control slipping entirely. Ryan, I'll come home and we can talk this out, just the two of us. Please. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook. Not this time. Oh, we'll talk, I said. But first, I want everyone here to know exactly what's going on. Claire, you've been lying to me for months, sneaking around with Eric, using work as an excuse to screw him behind my back. Is that about right? Her face turned bright red, a mix of anger and humiliation. Keep your voice down, she hissed. Why? I snapped, afraid someone might hear the truth. Eric tried to chime in again. Look, man. Shut up, I said, cutting him off. You've said enough. And don't think this is over for you. Your HR department's about to have a very interesting day tomorrow. His face fell. Clearly, he hadn't considered the consequences of shacking up with a married coworker. Good. Claire finally snapped. Fine, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. You want the truth, Ryan? Yes, I've been seeing Eric. And you know why? Because I'm sick of feeling like a second priority in my own marriage. I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. Second priority? You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and you're trying to make this my fault? Her eyes glistened with tears. Whether they were real or just part of her performance, I couldn't tell. You don't listen to me anymore. You're always working, always focused on your stupid business. I felt invisible, Ryan. Eric made me feel seen. Jack barked out a bitter laugh behind me. Oh, so it's Ryan's fault you couldn't keep your legs closed. Got it. Claire shot him a glare, but I stepped forward, cutting her off. You felt invisible? Really? I've been the one holding this marriage together while you've been sneaking off to hotels and sending flirty texts during work trips. Don't you dare try to pin this on me. Her tears spilled over then, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I'm done, I said, my voice firm. We're done, Claire. I'm filing for divorce. And trust me, you're not walking away from this clean. Her eyes widened in panic. Ryan, wait. Don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to therapy. No, I said sharply. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. I turned and walked away, Jack following close behind. Claire called after me, her voice breaking, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. As we stepped back into the night air, I felt an odd mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief. Jack clapped a hand on my shoulder as we reached his car. You okay? He asked. Not really, I admitted. But I will be. That night, I packed a bag and left the house. I wasn't about to spend another second under the same roof as her. I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town and spent the rest of the night combing through the evidence I'd gathered. The divorce papers would be my next move. But before that, I had one more thing to do. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Claire's HR department. Attached were screenshots of her texts with Eric, the pictures of them entering the hotel, and a detailed account of what I'd discovered. I kept it professional, sticking to the facts, but I made sure they understood the gravity of the situation. When I hit send, I felt a small surge of satisfaction. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I'd make sure she regretted it. The email to Claire's HR department was the first step in what I knew would be a long, messy process. I wasn't just going to let her waltz through life, pretending nothing happened. And I certainly wasn't going to let Eric walk away unscathed either. If they thought they could humiliate me and face no consequences, they were about to learn otherwise. The fallout began faster than I expected. 2 days after I sent the email, I got a call from Paula, the receptionist at Claire's office. She sounded hesitant, almost apologetic. Ryan, she said, lowering her voice, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but, well, HR called Claire into a meeting this morning. Eric too. A grim smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Thanks, Paula. I appreciate the heads up. She sighed. I'm sorry things turned out like this. You're a good guy. You didn't deserve this. I thanked her and hung up, satisfaction spreading through me like a slow burn. Claire and Eric were about to find out how much they'd risked for their little fling. Later that evening, while I was staying at the motel, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire. Claire, what the hell did you do? HR just called me in and suspended me pending an investigation. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? I stared at the screen, shaking my head in disbelief. Even now, she wasn't apologizing or taking responsibility. It was all about her and the damage to her reputation. I typed a response, keeping it short and to the point. Me, you did this to yourself. Enjoy the consequences. Her reply came almost immediately. Claire, you're being vindictive. I made a mistake, Ryan. But this is cruel. I didn't bother replying. She wasn't worth my time. The next day, Jack came over to help me pack up my things from the house. Claire wasn't there. She was probably hiding out somewhere, trying to figure out her next move. As we loaded my boxes into Jack's truck, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of closure. The house that had once been a symbol of our marriage now felt like a prison I was finally escaping. As we worked, Jack glanced at me. You hear anything else about Claire and Eric? I smirked. Claire texted me last night. Apparently, HR suspended her and Eric while they investigate. She's panicking. Jack laughed, shaking his head. Good. They deserve it. You're handling this better than I expected, you know? Am I? I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Because right now, all I feel is anger. That's normal, he said. But you're doing the right thing. You're taking control. His words stuck with me as we finished loading the truck. By the end of the week, things escalated even further. Claire called me, her voice frantic and shaky. I debated letting it go to voicemail but decided to answer. What do you want, Claire? I said flatly. Ryan, you need to stop this, she pleaded. Eric's being transferred to another office and I might lose my job. Do you really want to ruin my life over one mistake? I laughed bitterly. One mistake? Don't insult me, Claire. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice you made over and over again. I was unhappy, she snapped, her tone shifting to anger. You ignored me, Ryan. You pushed me into this. And there it is, I said, my voice ice cold. The same excuse. Newsflash, Claire. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. You could have asked for a divorce. But no, you decided to lie and cheat instead. So no, I'm not stopping anything. You wanted to play dirty? Fine. Now deal with it. I hung up before she could respond. A week later, I got an update from Paula. The investigation was complete. Eric had been officially transferred to a different branch, and Claire was terminated. Her spotless corporate reputation was gone, and word spread quickly among her professional circle. She wasn't just out of a job, she was out of options. But the fallout didn't stop there. Mutual friends and family started reaching out, curious about why Claire and I were suddenly separated. At first, I kept things vague, not wanting to air our dirty laundry. But when Claire started spinning her own version of events, claiming I was controlling and paranoid, I decided the truth needed to come out. I sent a carefully worded email to our closest friends and family, attaching the screenshots of her texts and the pictures of her and Eric at the hotel. I didn't add any commentary, just the cold, hard facts. The reactions were immediate. Some friends called or messaged me, expressing their support and disgust at Claire's behavior. Others, mostly her friends, tried to defend her at first, but the evidence was undeniable. Even her parents, who had always adored her, were horrified. Her mother called me in tears, apologizing for her daughter's actions. We had no idea, she said. Ryan, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve this. Claire's world was crumbling around her, and I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Meanwhile, I focused on moving forward. The divorce papers were finalized within a month. Thanks to the evidence I'd gathered, Claire didn't contest a single thing. I walked away with everything: the house, the savings, and most importantly, my dignity. Eric? From what I heard, he didn't last long at his new branch. Word of his affair with Claire had followed him, and his reputation took a nosedive. Last I heard, he'd left the company entirely. As for Claire, she tried reaching out a few more times, begging for forgiveness, but I never responded. I blocked her number and deleted every trace of her from my life. That chapter of my life was over. And though the scars would take time to heal, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally free. After the divorce was finalized, I felt like I was emerging from a fog. For months, my life had been consumed by lies, betrayal, and confrontation. Now, the chaos was over, and I was left with something I hadn't felt in years: clarity. But clarity didn't mean peace, at least not right away. The emotional wreckage Claire left behind was massive, and I had to figure out how to rebuild my life without her. The first step was reclaiming my space. Claire's absence in the house was palpable. Her shoes by the door, her decorative throw pillows, the framed pictures of us at weddings and vacations. It all screamed her. I couldn't stand it. Jack helped me clear everything out one weekend. We boxed up her things and stuffed them in the garage. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away just yet, but I knew I couldn't look at them either. "You know what this place needs?" Jack said as we finished. "A fresh coat of paint. Something to make it yours again." I took his advice. By the end of the week, I'd painted the living room a deep navy blue. Claire had hated dark colors, but I found the shade calming. I swapped out the furniture we'd picked together for new pieces that matched my style: sleek, minimalist, and practical. The house wasn't just a house anymore. It was mine. Reclaiming my space was one thing, but reclaiming my mind was another. The betrayal had left a wound I couldn't see, but I felt it every day. Random things would trigger memories of Claire: the smell of her favorite perfume, the way she used to hum while cooking, the sound of her laugh in a crowd. I needed help. I started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Langley, was a no-nonsense guy in his 50s who didn't let me wallow in self-pity. During one of our first sessions, he asked me a question that stuck with me. "What did you lose, Ryan?" he said. "And don't just say your wife. What exactly did you lose?" I stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "You didn't just lose a person," he said. "You lost trust, routine, security. You lost a version of yourself that believed in your marriage. That's what you're grieving. And that's what we're going to rebuild." He was right. The pain wasn't just about Claire. It was about everything she represented. As weeks turned into months, I started finding myself again. I threw myself into work, taking on bigger projects and hiring an extra pair of hands to help with my growing business. For the first time in years, I felt proud of what I'd built. On weekends, I started hiking again, a hobby Claire had always dismissed as boring. Being out in nature, surrounded by silence, gave me a peace I hadn't felt in ages. I even adopted a second dog, a German Shepherd mix named Luna, to keep Rocky company. The biggest change, though, was my perspective. Therapy helped me see that Claire's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. She'd made her choices, and those choices said more about her than they ever did about me. Meanwhile, Claire's life continued to spiral. Mutual friends would occasionally update me, uninvited, but I couldn't stop them. She'd been blacklisted from several companies in her industry, her name tied to the HR scandal. Eric, the man she'd risked everything for, had ghosted her not long after losing his job. She'd moved in with her sister, trying to start over, but even her family was struggling to forgive her. One day, I got an email from her. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a long, rambling message about how much she regretted what she'd done, how she wished she could take it all back, how she hoped one day I could forgive her. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. I didn't feel anger anymore, just indifference. Her apology wasn't for me. It was for her. And I didn't owe her anything. By the time the one-year mark rolled around, I hardly recognized the man I'd been when this all started. The pain was still there, but it had dulled to a distant ache. I'd learned to live with it, to let it shape me without defining me. Jack and I celebrated the anniversary of my divorce with a barbecue at his place. Over beers and burgers, he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're doing good. Bro, Claire's probably crying into a bottle of wine somewhere, and here you are, winning." I laughed, shaking my head. "I don't feel like I'm winning." "You are," he said firmly, "because you didn't let her break you. And that's a win." I didn't argue. The truth was, he was right. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Time has a funny way of changing things. A year after the divorce, I thought I'd put everything behind me. My life was moving forward, and I'd made peace with Claire's betrayal, or so I thought. But closure isn't a straight line, and sometimes the past has a way of forcing its way back in. It happened on a random Thursday. I was finishing up a project site visit when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved, but I recognized the area code. At first, I thought it might be a potential client, so I answered. Hello? Ryan? My grip on the phone tightened. I'd recognize that voice anywhere. Claire, I said flatly, what do you want? There was a pause, then a sigh. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. About what? I said, already annoyed. Can we meet in person? She asked. Please. It's important. My first instinct was to say no, to tell her to leave me alone and never call again. But something about her tone stopped me. She didn't sound angry or manipulative like she had before. She sounded desperate. I sighed. Fine. Tomorrow. Noon. The coffee shop on Pine. Thank you, she said softly, then hung up before I could change my mind. The next day, I arrived early, partly to get the best spot and partly to steel myself for whatever she was about to drop on me. The place was quiet, the lunchtime rush still a half-hour away. I ordered a black coffee and took a seat by the window. Claire arrived 10 minutes later. She looked different, thinner, her makeup minimal, her blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She didn't have the polished, corporate air she used to carry. She looked tired. Hi, she said hesitantly, standing awkwardly by the table. Sit, I said, keeping my tone neutral. She slid into the seat across from me, folding her hands on the table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She seemed to be gathering her thoughts, and I wasn't about to make it easier for her. Finally, she took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the half-assed one I sent in that email. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting her continue. What I did to you? Her voice broke slightly, and she paused to steady herself. It was wrong. All of it. I lied to you, I betrayed you, and I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. And I'm so sorry. Her eyes were glossy with unshed tears, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold detachment. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here, I said, my voice calm but firm. What are you expecting from me, Claire? Forgiveness? Redemption? She shook her head quickly. No, I know I don't deserve either of those things. I needed to say it, to own up to what I did. Why now? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Why a year later? Her gaze dropped to the table. Because my life has fallen apart, she admitted quietly. I lost my job, my reputation, my friends, everything. And I've spent the past year realizing how much of that is my own fault. But the thing I regret the most is losing you. I laughed bitterly. You didn't lose me, Claire. You threw me away. She flinched at my words, but I didn't let up. You had everything, Claire. A husband who loved you, a life we built together, and you traded it for a fling with some sleazeball coworker. And now that it's blown up in your face, you want to come crawling back? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. No, Ryan. I don't. I'm not asking to come back. I know that ship has sailed. I just needed you to hear me, to know that I'm sorry. I studied her for a long moment, searching her face for any sign of manipulation or deceit. For once, I didn't find any. She looked genuinely remorseful, but it didn't change anything. I hear you, I said finally, but it doesn't matter. Your apology doesn't erase what you did or how it destroyed me. I've spent the last year putting my life back together, and I'm not about to let you back in, on any level. Her shoulders sagged, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. I understand, she whispered. I needed to say it. Then you've said it, I replied, standing up and tossing a few bills on the table. Goodbye, Claire. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my chest. For so long, her betrayal had haunted me, the unanswered questions gnawing at the edges of my mind. But now, I had my answers. She was sorry, but her regret didn't change the past. and it didn't define my future. That night, I sat on my back porch with a beer in hand, staring up at the stars. The air was crisp, the faint scent of pine drifting through the breeze. For the first time, I felt truly at peace. Claire's chapter in my life was finally, completely closed. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.